a prediction I made 2 years ago, that my fear is confidence breaking in the United States. This whole system is predicated upon the assumption that the government is strong. Why do people fear like, hey, I can't commit a crime, or I can't, sometimes it could be something minor as jaywalking. People are like, no, I probably shouldn't do that. Why? Because they fear the repercussions for transgressing against a powerful force like the US government. Same thing about the US dollar. Why does it have value? Because people believe it does. So if you say hey, if you do X for me, I'll give you $10. I'm like, that $10 I know I can trade somewhere else. What if one day you woke up and you had money and you went to the store and they said, I want that. And you were like, wait, but it's money. It's like, I don't care. All of a sudden you'd be like, well, then I'm not interested in collecting more of it because it's not working. You'd have to find some other means. My fear last year or the year before, and I was saying this, is that it comes to the point where maybe in Nebraska or in Nevada or something, New Mexico, a small town just decides federal law doesn't apply to us anymore. We don't know what's going on in Congress. Nothing's getting done. Our border is under attack. You get a small town, maybe it's 1,000, 2,000 people. They have a city meeting where a quarter of the population shows up and everyone's yelling and rabble, rabble, rabble. And then a couple guys who are local militia guys just say, we are not going to sit around and wait for the feds to deal with this when we have criminal aliens invading our country, bringing drugs and violence. We need to set up checkpoints now and figure it out later. That's what happens. That's what you get. My fear is that eventually there will be a truck trying to come for a delivery through the highway, and there's going to be 4 guys, just militia guys, and going to put their hands up, stop the truck, and say, what can I do for you?
See, but this is the problem with anarcho-tyranny, is that the government would immediately send the army to go take care of that little issue.
Not if it happens all over the place. My point is confidence, not a single group of individuals in one place. If confidence breaks that the U.S. government is no longer enforcing the law, which is exactly what we're seeing with Donald Trump, this comes next year, right? And maybe not totally wrong. It's just hypothetical. Potential scenario based on the probabilities. If Donald Trump loses, you already have, over the past 4 years, what is it, 70% of the Republican Party saying Trump actually won and Joe Biden's not the president. What do you think happens if Joe Biden wins again with this on the border, with the border literally being attacked? People in Texas are going to start saying, we need to start enforcing this ourselves. There's no government. When you have hordes of non-citizens coming in your community, sleeping in your streets, there's rape, there's murder, Lake and Riley, for instance, you're going to get some guys who just say, here's what we do. We go to our street corners. We have neighborhood watch patrols guard our neighborhoods. We get radios and we make sure these people don't come in. Then when someone comes in for a delivery, they stop and say, what can I do for you? Say, I'm here with the delivery. What's your delivery? Where are you going? Who are you going to? Okay, you're cleared to enter.
No. Open up the back of the truck. Let's take a look before you let you in.
Absolutely. And then they say, sorry for stopping you, man. But with everything we're seeing on the border, this starts in Texas. It'll happen in Oklahoma. The federal government will not be able to do this. There are not enough federal law enforcement or U.S. military personnel, not to mention they couldn't under posse comitatus anyway. There's not enough federal law enforcement to be able to go across the country if even 100 of these scenarios begin to emerge, where people in their local communities feel like the government isn't functioning anymore. And it can start very simply, but it can start overnight. You've got Congress, impotent, unable to get anything done. The border is being overrun. Everyone knows. Democrats in Chicago, New York, Los Angeles, all major cities are screaming about this. You've got people in the black community in Chicago screaming at Democrats saying, we are being replaced. While the media is claiming that if you say you're being replaced, you're a white supremacist. The system is not functioning anymore. So I fear it's only a matter of time now, especially as we're entering the warmer months, and this is going to crank up dramatically, that it's going to be 7 guys in a small town here, 15 guys in a small town there. They're going to say, I don't care about Tim Pool. I don't care about Crowder. I don't care about Rogan. I don't care about CNN. I don't care about Trump. I don't care about Biden. All I know is some guy came and murdered my neighbor's kid. And then they're going to set up their neighborhood watch, and you're going to have pockets of sovereign law enforcement in their own communities. Local police departments will probably be on board with a lot of these groups, and they'll start defying federal law more than they already do.
This is something that Lake and Riley's dad mentioned the other day when he was addressing the Georgia Senate, which is that the millions of illegal immigrants who've entered the country are making families nervous. Like, they are now concerned, like you're saying, that not only is the federal government not going to stop in to protect them at the border, but also the state government is not going to protect them either, because he pointed out that the city where University of Georgia's campus is in is a sanctuary city.
Yep.
And so all the steps failed that we're supposed to believe in. We're supposed to believe that the government's in place is there to protect our citizens. And instead, he gives this emotional speech talking about how he has basically lost his purpose because his daughter is gone because of someone who we knew was here illegally and who got arrested in New York. So there were steps along the way at which this person could have been, deported. And instead, he arrived in a sanctuary city and allegedly murdered Laken Riley. I mean, it's a tragedy, but the more examples that we have of these things, the more fathers like Jason Riley will exist and will say, we are losing confidence in you guys.
Well, but it's also, I mean, you could say the same thing about just the overall rate of violent crime in America, where you've got people like Daniel Penny. I mean, they're making an example out of him specifically to say, like, if you try to do the government's job for us, we don't care about the criminals. We can't do anything. Apparently, we're completely impotent to stop the criminals, but they are very good at stopping people who stand up to the criminals. And I don't want to underestimate the power of the federal government, because, I mean, when they want to clean something up, it gets cleaned up. Look at what happened a couple years ago with the Haitians, where there were, like, it was at Eagle Pass, Texas. There were thousands of them camped. It was continuous. It was getting worse and worse. More were flowing in. And at the moment it became embarrassing for the federal government, the next day it was cleaned up, totally cleaned up. Like the tents were gone, the trash was gone, the people were gone.
But it's
a choice.
Spot removal. The federal government does not have the ability to contain dozens across the country all at once. They struggled with the Bundy family scenario. They struggled with it. It was a big problem, and they're desperately trying to retaliate against the Bundys because of what happened. And specifically, I think they threw him back in jail. When it comes to the point where there is no confidence at a wide level, which is where we are going, New York doesn't so much matter to the big picture. New York is New York. New York will do what New York is going to do. The cops in New York, do you know why the National Guard and the cops are in the subways checking bags? That's not to stop crime. It's to stop you.
Right.
Because Daniel Penny committed an act of vigilantism. Because there was a video or photo from November of a guy opening fire with a revolver, I believe, in the subway because of a mugger. They don't care about the crime. They care about vigilantes. They want to check your bag to make sure the next time someone commits crime, you don't stop them.
Right. Well, it's also just getting people used to the idea of having a soldier with an automatic rifle checking your bags because you're going on the subway. I mean, it's inuring us to the concept of military occupation.
But this will happen in cities, but it's not going to be the same outside of cities. The challenge for the federal government is always going to be that they do not have the manpower. No law enforcement agency has the manpower for their jurisdiction. It may have been the case 200 years ago, but it's not been the case for at least 70 years. New York, for instance, has an estimated, 30,000 police officers? Someone want to Google the number? I think if you include support personnel, it might be like 38,000. There's 2.5 million people on Manhattan Island alone. If 1% of Manhattan Island was rioting through the streets, you would not be able to coordinate third shift police forces do anything about it. They would have to call in neighboring police in an emergency, call in the National Guard. If 10%, not even 10, 5%, if 5% of New York City, and I would say Manhattan Island, let's say the entire New York metro coalesces in Manhattan for a protest, there's 13 million, 10% is a million people, and they all are just rioting. It's over instantly. So people often overestimate the strength of the federal government because of what is called spot removal, meaning something spikes and the federal government targets it and eradicates it.
Right.
So you get a mass shooter, law enforcement go in. But what if you get 50 all at once? They do not have the managerial power to coordinate against something like that. And this is my concern.
Well, but the thing is, they're already putting the things in place to stop it from ever getting to that eventuality by saying that white supremacy is the number one threat, by targeting the militia movement. They're piecemeal going through and stopping.
But you misunderstand. What I'm saying is it is those actions which is putting in the minds of regular Americans across the country, there is no government. And so the federal government can come out and accuse white people of being racist all day and night. They can put in these policies where we see things saying like, if you want to get this job, you can't be white, which we literally just saw in a viral X post. Mm-hmm. And all that's doing is cracking away at confidence that government actually exists. So there will not be a capability of the 16,000 federal law enforcement agents or whatever to deal with 50 different instances across the country of not even violent riots, quite literally just local militias setting up checkpoints. At that point, they're going to be like, where do we go now to try and stop this? Eventually, more people start breaking away. They say California has not respected the law in 20 years. California says Texas is defying the Supreme Court. Texas says California is defying the Supreme Court. You've got Virginia, West Virginia, Maryland have jurisdictions that have declared themselves two-way sanctuaries and are refusing to enforce state and federal law pertaining to guns. It is just breaking apart very, very slowly. And eventually, it will just be hyper-localized. New York will say, all we can do is New York. The federal government will say, we only have access to certain areas, so let's secure our resources in the areas that matter most. But there's going to be lost areas that are just going to fall into civilian militia control.
Do you want the NYPD data really quick?
Yeah, how many people?
So in 2023, there were just under 34,000 officers. And in 2000, it was at its all-time high with just over 40,000 officers.
Yeah, and I think a third of them are support staff, meaning they don't actually have guns.
And they're reporting that they're well under what they're budgeted for, meaning that they
Right.
are losing people quickly and they don't have the staff that they theoretically think they need.
I think there's like this fantasy, this technocratic fantasy that one day we'll have enough control of our population that we'll have drone surveillance and militia. Like, yeah, you might have 30 different militias in 30 different places, but we've got the drones because right now, like you're saying, the humans can't organizationally handle that kind of breakout, but drones can. But LOL, it's a freaking fantasy, you guys. If the power goes out, first of all, secondly, you cannot contain local rebellion, not on a mass scale.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.